The identity of R.R. Ryan is a bit of an enigma. James Doig had come forward with a theory that Ryan's true identity was one Evelyn Bradley, who may have co-written some of his novels with his daughter Denise Jeanette Bradley Ryan. Bradley was born in 1882 at Waterloo, Lancashire. He worked as a theatre manager and also wrote plays, which included such titles as Mad Doctor, The Trap, Unwanted Child, Yellow Vengeance, or Volga Boatman. Bradley spent most of his life at Hove in Sussex. He committed suicide in 1950. Evelyn Bradley's authorship of the R.R. Ryan books is still debatable, however, since there is apparently an article which claims that his daughter Denise is the actual author, with Ryan simply typing out his daughter's shorthand manuscripts. On the other hand, we have the book contracts with the publishers, which list Ryan's home address as that of Evelyn Bradley. Also, there is a death certificate from 1950 which equates Bradley with Rex Ryan, a name used on the contracts. Going by what John Pellin said about this in 2018, it seems likely Denise may have in fact been the sole author, but I would reserve final judgment given that, well, things never seem to be easy with Ryan. Regardless of who wrote it, Echo of a Curse came out in 1939. Like several prior entries on this channel, it was also featured on Karl Edward Wagner's famous list, and it is actually a proper fit this time, unlike some of his other choices. The story begins in the trenches of the First World War, where the quasi-protagonist, Terry Cliff, gets introduced to a new transfer, a certain Vincent Border. Charming and almost disturbingly beautiful, Terry suspects something is wrong with Border at first, and he gets his confirmation when one night Border nearly slits his throat. That is, Terry's, not his own. It transpires that, under the influence of drink, he becomes most violent and uncontrollable. Border asks for Terry's help to try and stay sober, and he reluctantly agrees and doesn't report him. They become closer, and Terry decides to take Border with him on leave, where he gets introduced to Mary, the woman Terry secretly loves, and would have asked her to promise herself to him when he left, if he didn't feel it was unfair given how he might never come back. Something magnetic in Border's personality makes Mary fall in love with him, and they get married to Terry's chagrin. However, things soon take a turn for the worse. Border takes to drink again and begins to violently attack Mary. When he gets thrashed by Terry and Mary is thus inaccessible, he even tries to force himself on Ruth, the 16-year-old orphan maid that Mary got to help around the household. Mary refuses to divorce Border, especially since she is now with child, however. So Border remains living at the house, but Terry makes sure to keep him away from Mary. Sometime later, a carnival comes to town, along with a very special booth containing what is referred to as the Inexplicable, a humanoid wolf-ape creature so grotesque that Mary refuses to go see it or to let Ruth go either. Border, on the other hand, seems really amused by the news and even states the creature is his own father. Then suddenly the Inexplicable escapes and begins to murder people. Border is quite convinced the creature will come to their house, and a row happens between him and Mary, at which point she curses Border's child to be born as a freak. But just then the Inexplicable happens to pop in and Mary faints. What follows is a child swap conspiracy by Border, the birth of a deformed monstrous offspring, Terry moving in with Mary, and then, many years later, the return of Vincent and Mary's son, determined to avenge himself for the curse which made him so deformed. The novel doesn't quite clear up some things, such as the direct relation between the Inexplicable and the father Border describes as having a religion based upon the dead, who swore that even in death he would still be alive. Also, though Terry is principally the main character, he gets knocked out and horribly mangled towards the end of the book, and after that he never really shows up again, with Vincent taking up his spotlight for the climax. It is certainly an entertaining novel. It also avoids werewolf cliches. For instance, the phases of the moon have no significance to anything, and at no point is it ever implied that the curse may be transferred via a quick nibble. Border is quite the bastard as well, and you're kind of hoping to see him get his proper comeuppance.